talking about some hormones. Who here has heard of some of the hormones that cause problems as we age? Can anyone name one for me? Estrogen. Lovely. Good start. Very good. We're also going to be talking about training for women. We're going to be talking about nutrition, so particularly how you fuel yourself and how you recover. And we're also going to be talking about all the fun stuff that comes with changes in life cycles. So, did you know that approximately 49.8% of the global population is female? We are just under 50% of the global population. Some countries have more of us, some countries have less, just depending on sort of like how things are. But as a general rule, this is how many of us there are. Anybody want to have a guess as to how much research is done specifically on women for women's conditions?
Less than 5%?
Less than 5%. Anybody else got any numbers? No? It's pretty good. There you go, Trisha. It's about 5%. So women are put into research quite a lot of the time, but a lot of the time they actually throw the research out that's pertaining to the women itself. Because we have a cycle, we are slightly more unpredictable than men. Therefore, our information skews the overall results. So a lot of the time, the information that you're given, particularly when it comes to tablets, medications and things like that, they just decrease the dosage slightly based on your weight. They don't take into account the type of cycle you have. They don't take into account which particular part of life you're at. And our bodies respond to medications in different ways to men because, please remember this phrase, we are not small men. Remember that. It's very important. Now, who remembers puberty?
God, yes.
Who remembers the fun days of being really spotty and really moody? Yeah? This is a really important stage of life, actually. Surprisingly enough, puberty is the very beginning and foundation for how your life will be as you age. So how you get through puberty and how you support your daughters, your nieces, and your grandkids through puberty is really important. And it's not just about them being moody and you trying to kind of keep in contact with them. It's actually about helping them to understand what happens at this stage of life. So we've obviously got hair growth. We have body odor. We have acne that starts because we start to get oils in our skins and things along those lines. We have growth. Big growth spurts. We get taller, we start to develop breasts. Usually within 2 to 3 years of your breast starting to develop, that's when you start having a period, because that is when the hormones will start to kick in at a new level. If your period has not started by the time you are 16, you're considered a late bloomer. If your period started before you were 9.5, you are considered prepubescent. Neither one of these things is particularly good. So you want to be somewhere around that 12, 13 mark when your period first starts. That's a good age to be at. Because your body is relatively ready for the changes that happen at that point into there. If you're a little bit early, you obviously can't do anything about it, but you will need to support those children in a slightly different way to those who start a little bit later in life. And the way that their bodies will change over time will be different based on when they start as well. If we jump past puberty, because we've all experienced that, we're going to talk about the fertile years. So basically, once you start getting your period, you are considered fertile. Who thinks a 10-year-old having a kid's a good idea? No, it's not a particularly good idea. So your fertile years last up until you start menopause. So you've got quite a long window, so it can start anywhere from 9, 10 years old and can go all the way through until you're 50 to 55, depending on when you actually go through menopause. So there's quite a big window that happens in through here. The best time period for having children, if you want to go down that path, is actually between 25 and 35. Before 25, your body is still considered to be immature because you haven't completely developed skeletally, or all the internal organs, they haven't completely settled into all of their different areas properly. But once you get to 25, you're considered pretty okay. And then from 35 onwards, it's not really to do with the level of fertility you have, it's actually the quality of your eggs at that point that is considered the more dangerous side of things. From 35 onwards, we have a decrease and a very quick decline in the quality of the egg, and therefore our likelihood of a good pregnancy with a very healthy child at the end actually decreases as we age. And the older we get past 35, so once we're into our 40s in particular, that in decline is exponential in number, which is why it's so much harder to have children once you're above 40, and why they take so much more care of you when you do get to that part of it. So if you've got any friends who are in that particular age bracket who are having children, please be aware with them. It's a very hard time. They have loads of extra tests. They get poked and prodded by loads of extra doctors. It's not fun. They need help. They need support. Women like social connection. It's good for us. It's part of what keeps our brains healthy. But one of the really important things to note about the fertile years is that the regularity and health of your menstrual cycle is the best indicator of your overall health. If you have a very regular cycle that is not painful, that comes, does the things and go away, means you are incredibly healthy. If you have a regular cycle that is painful, shows up, does its thing, but keeps you bedbound for 1 to 3 days, that is a sign that there is something not going right. That is a sign that your hormones are actually not playing together the way that they're meant to. If you have an irregular cycle, so your cycle itself is more than 30 days apart, or shows up as and when it chooses, that is a sign that your body is really not healthy at all. And this is something we are not taught.
Is that hormonally not healthy or in other ways?
Always. It's not just hormonally, it's actually the way that everything else is kind of building on top of itself. So each block is kind of like a foundation stack of cards. And if you take too many cards away from the bottom, the whole tower of cards is going to fall out everywhere. And the menstrual cycle for a woman is the grounding for what everything else works on top of. Because we have supposed to have such a regular cycle, we go through those 4 phases. It's meant to happen every month. That is what regulates the way that our organs function. That is what regulates the way that our brain functions. That's what regulates our sleep and the way that we actually digest our food and how well we can train. Your best time for lifting heavy weights is actually when you are ovulating. That is the time that you are most like a man. You have the highest levels of testosterone at that point, so you're more likely to be a little bit grumpy with people as well. But you are also the strongest at that point because your muscles are the most stable, because testosterone is really good at stabilizing joints. It's also really good at keeping muscle tone nice and strong, and you are more likely to make more gains at that time in your cycle. The worst time is the opposite end when you first start your period. You are likely to be weak, you are likely to be moody, and you are likely to have slightly unstable joints at that point. So anytime you're doing training, make sure that whoever is training you knows whereabout in the cycle that you're at. And please tell other women about this. It's really important that we know these things. A lot of personal trainers know this stuff now, and they will then base your training cycle around your personal cycle, which is quite nice. It means you can push heavier when you work in the right place.
When in your cycle is the ovulation bit? So
Never fully understood that one. So, the beginning of your cycle is when you have your period. So that is when your progesterone levels have hit their peak, and then estrogen will start to come out the top in through there. Once you've gone through the period itself, what you'll then go into is what's called follicular phase. Follicular phase is when the follicle is growing and the ovary will release the egg. Once the egg has been released, that is ovulation. So that's when the egg's roaming around, and if you get sperm in there, that's when you obviously get fertile and you start having a baby. If there is no fertilizing of the egg, you will go then back into the luteal phase, which will then come back into having a period. So the body will decrease the lining and will start to flush it out, and that's what a period is. It's basically, there's no baby in here that I need to grow, so I'm going to flush out the bloody lining that I just created, and we'll start the whole process again.
will it be about 2 weeks?
It's around about 2 to 3 weeks post-period is around ovulation time. It does shuffle about a little bit depending on how regular your cycle is. Most people, it should be somewhere between 21 and 30 days is considered to be a regular cycle, so around that 29 days period if you can. But there is a little bit of variation with that. As long as everything is relatively regular and you have a period about once a month to once every 5 weeks, you're considered to be within normal limits. Right. We're not going to talk about too much about pregnancy, but there's a lot of complications that come with pregnancy and through there. And your age will also help with some of those complications as well. So the younger you are, usually the less complications you have. The older you are, the more likely you are to get some of the slightly nastier complications that nobody wants. As we move into this lovely phrase that everybody likes to avoid. Who here heard about menopause when they started getting to that age bracket and not before? Did anyone's mother or grandmother talk to them about the change? Yeah? It's not a normal topic of conversation, this. The world over, menopause has been stigmatized as the end of a woman's life. A lot of people have been considered to be useless and to be put away and never spoken to or about again because they've gone through this phase. Now, menopause can actually start quite young. Some people start menopause in their early 40s. It's considered normal to start around 50, but it can start earlier. And it can start earlier, just basically depending on what amount of eggs you've got in your life and how quickly they decline over your lifetime as well. But menopause is a really important time of life to talk about because it is the change. It is when we start to lose that normal cyclical pattern. The first stage of it is called perimenopause. Now, perimenopause can last between 1 and 5 years, and perimenopause is when your body is beginning to go through the change of not having a regular cycle. This is a normal part of it. So this is when your body is starting to break down some of those normal cycles that we've been going through for the previous 15, 20, 30 years, depending on when you start. Once you get into menopause, that is when you are considered to be 1 year post your last period. Anything before that, and if you have a period, you are then considered to be still in perimenopause. Menopause does not begin until you have had a whole year of no period and they do not come back again. Once you've had 1 to 2 years of menopause, you are then considered postmenopausal. And a different type of life cycle will begin at that point. But the big thing that we need to talk about with menopause is the change in the way that your hormones function. Because the way that these hormones change their functions will change the ways that your bodies and your brains respond to stress and the environment that you're in. So the 3 hormones that we're going to talk about today, we are going to talk about estrogen, we're going to talk about progesterone, and we're going to be talking about testosterone, because all 3 of these are really important for women and men. Men have estrogen as well, it's the bonding hormone. Just like women have got testosterone, it's part of what keeps us all healthy. And if we don't have a good balanced level of all 3 of these, things like HRT can be a way of helping yourself, but you can also help yourself with your diet, your nutrition, and the way that you train your bodies. That doesn't mean you need to go to the gym and start pumping weights, but you do need to do exercise, particularly once you're 35.
So how would a hysterectomy affect all of this?
Very good question. So if you have a complete hysterectomy where they take away your ovaries as well as your uterus, you are going to need hormonal therapy. Because your body now has no way of creating these hormones itself, you will need to take those hormones synthetically. You can get some in your foods that you eat, but you will need to have the therapy itself because you don't have anything left. If you have a partial hysterectomy, so they take away your uterus, but they leave your ovaries behind, your body is actually in a better state because your ovaries can still produce the estrogen and the testosterone. They won't produce them in anywhere near the same levels that they were when you were in the fertile years, but they will still be producing them at fairly standard levels for a postmenopausal woman. That's a good question. This is one of the reasons why when you go into menopause and they start putting you on HRT, they will sometimes try you on different types of HRT. They might try you on a combined, they might try you with patches, they might try you with gels, and they might try you with tablets. So you've got to try different things to work out which one works for you because every single human is slightly different and we all need slightly different levels of it. But some of the things that you can do for yourself is learn how these different hormones work. So estrogen is really important because it works through your menstrual cycle. It's also really good because it maintains your bone density. Why do you think old ladies falling over and breaking hips is bad? Anybody got any idea of the likelihood of surviving a broken hip?
It's not very long.
No? About 70% of women, in particular, who fracture a hip and end up in hospital for more than a week, don't survive a year. So bone density is really important as we age. And estrogen is really important for keeping your bone density strong. So making sure that you've got the right levels of estrogen in your body will keep you stronger and therefore healthier, therefore less likely to end up on the wrong side of a fractured hip.
How long should you carry on taking estrogen?
So that will depend on whether you've had the hysterectomy or not. If you've not had a hysterectomy and you did your HRT for the 2 years or so that you were in that menopausal sort of zone, if your body is now able to regulate itself, which it should be by the time you get past that 2 years, you should be able to come off the HRT. There will be some side effects when you come off the HRT because your body has got used to synthetically taking it in elsewhere. Your body will have to kind of take it over, which is why usually you have to wean yourself off them and you have to increase some of your dietary versions of it for a while just to kind of get your body to regulate itself. But normally I would say if you're on HRT for anything more than 5 years, you're doing your body a disservice unless you've had the full hysterectomy done. The other thing that estrogen is really important for is skin elasticity. Wrinkles, droopy faces, little wobbly chins, all those sorts of things in through there. All the things that we love, isn't it? Who doesn't know talk about wing dingo wings, eh? But skin elasticity is obviously important because it helps us to age more gracefully. Whether you're into graceful or disgraceful aging, we all like to look nice, don't we? Health and blood vessel support, as well as keeping your cholesterol levels nice and healthy, getting your brain functioning nicely, and keeping your brain protected, as well as mood regulation. So estrogen does quite a lot of things, as we can see. Progesterone also does quite a lot of things. It does also help to regulate your menstrual cycle. It supports pregnancy. It's a natural diuretic, so it helps to flush out anything that's getting backed up in your tummies, which is why sometimes around your period, you can get the bouts of diarrhea because you've got high levels of progesterone, so your bowels move a little faster, so everything can be a little bit looser. It's not a bad thing. It's not always a good thing, especially if you can't get somewhere quickly, but it's not always a bad thing. The other thing about progesterone is thyroid function. Thyroid function. Who here has ever had a thyroid condition or knows someone with a thyroid condition? Any ideas how important the thyroid is in terms of keeping your hormones regulated? Keeping your mood regulated, keeping your bone density high, keeping your brain functioning well. Very important stuff for thyroid. So maintaining a healthy thyroid is a really important thing. It's good for men, but it's really important for women, particularly as we get towards that menopausal side of things, because if our thyroid is not functioning, our other hormones cannot function the way that they're meant to, our brains won't function properly, and the rest of our body will start to break down. Testosterone. So yes, it's part of your sex drive. So you need to have this stuff. If you want a nice active sex life, you need testosterone in your life. Bone density again, muscle strength, energy levels, supporting cognition again, and mood regulation, as well as balancing your stress response. If you have high levels of stress in your life and you have low levels of testosterone, what you end up with is a highly stressed individual who can't function. If you have high levels of stress and higher levels of testosterone, you actually function better because testosterone helps to counteract the long-term effects of cortisol on your body. It's kind of cool. Don't take a testosterone supplement if you are a highly stressed individual. That's not what it's for. It's more likely to make you hairy. But just keeping that in mind, testosterone in your life is good. And I don't just mean coming from your partner. Nutrition, in terms of how to keep all of these hormones balanced, protein and carbohydrates are your friends. Please do not do a carb-off diet. One of the worst things that you can do for yourselves, particularly when you get towards menopause, is to cut out carbs. By all means, please cut out processed carbs, all the white breads, all the processed pastas and those sorts of things. Cut out, go ahead. But carbohydrates is really important because carbohydrates is where you get glycogen, and glycogen is what feeds your brain the best. When you have too little carbohydrates in your diet, your body starts going into ketogenesis. Ketogenesis, while it's good for your brain, it's incredibly hard for your body and your brain to function on ketones alone. It tends to last for 3 months before your body will break down and you will start reverting back to eating quick carbs again. So you're far better off to have carbohydrates in your diet. You don't have to have carbs with absolutely every meal, and please try to aim for good whole food sources of carbohydrates. So vegetables, hearty breads, like proper bakery style breads and those sorts of things, homemade pastas and things along those lines. They are good for you and they are meant to be in your diet. If you can eat seasonally, please do so. The other thing that's really important is protein. Protein doesn't mean you need to eat meat with every meal, but it does mean that you do need to eat protein itself. One of the worst sources of protein for women postmenopausal is soy. Yeah, we'll talk about soy later, but please remember, soy is not your friend at this point in time. We like to talk about soy because we think it's good for us, but it's not always. The main thing about protein is it helps to support bone, muscle, metabolism, and your recovery. So this keeps your body fit and healthy. Carbohydrates, again, it's your brain function, it's keeping your energy levels where they should be. Who noticed an energy level drop when they went through the change, as we say? And who gets a little bit energy droppy when we're around that time of the month? Or remembers what it was like when you got to that time of the month? Where you're just a bit like, ugh, why? That is usually because we're not getting enough carbohydrates in ourselves at that time and period. Exercise performance is also really important with carbohydrates because it is the quickest source of energy for our bodies, it is the quickest source of fuel for our bodies, and it is the thing that our body wants to use first. We will always go for glycogen as our first source of food before we will go for fat. We'll go for glycogen, then we'll go for fats, and then long term, if we have to, we will start metabolizing our own muscles. We try not to, but we will always aim for the carbs first. So that blood sugar running around in you is really what we want to be using as fuel when we're training. Dieting, fasting, and body composition. These are some of the things you need to remember when it comes to choices in food. So when it comes to fasting, we are not like men. If we don't eat food for a significant amount of time, what our bodies will do is store fat. We will not eat the fat first. We will eat our muscles first. So if you go into a fasting diet, please be aware that you are going to gain fat first. You will lose muscle and you will gain fat. Long term, it's going to go the other direction, but if you fast, so if you would do a fasting diet where you're doing a 6-3 or a 9-12 or whatever it is that you're doing, please be aware that you will gain fat. And you'll gain it in all the areas you don't want it. On your tummy, in your thighs, and on your bum. Because those are the areas that we store the majority of our fat. Now, the reason that we store fat in these areas is because we are designed to carry children. And we need fat in these areas in order to hold on to a pregnancy. And then once we've got the child, it helps to keep us warm, which helps to keep the child warm. It also then helps us to lactate correctly so we can feed the child. We have a higher body fat composition than men. The average man has got somewhere between 6 and 9% body fat. The average woman has got between 9 and 13% body fat. And that is normal. We're meant to have a higher percentage of fat. We run at a cooler temperature, so we actually need the fat to keep us well insulated so we can keep our cores warm. Men actually run at a slightly higher temperature, which is why they can have less fat than we can. So body composition is important. We've obviously got 3 different types of bodies. You've got an ectomorph, which is the really tiny, skinny people that we all hate. You've got the endomorph, which is the other end of things that are a little bit chunkier. And then you've got the standard person in the middle who's got a mesomorph. Most people are a mesomorph with tendencies one direction or the other. Basically, it's your body's way of saying, I store more of this or I store more of that because that's the way that I'm genetically inclined. So fasting and dieting. Please don't go for fad diets. Just eat food. Food is good for you. Enjoy it. In terms of nutritional sources for estrogen, these are really, really good things. Things like flax seeds, peaches, garlic, red wine in moderation, sesame seeds, cruciferous vegetables, so things like broccoli, green leafy vegetables, those sorts of things, and nuts. Nuts are really your friend around that time of the month because they are full of all sorts of healthy fats and different types of minerals. So instead of going for the chocolate bar, go for a handful of nuts. I know it sounds wrong, but it's actually really good for you and you will actually feel better for doing it. Damaging foods in terms of estrogen are really high levels of red meat, non-organic dairy, and the reason for these two is because they often have added in hormones. So they have added in growth factor, and it is normally animal growth factor, not human growth factor, and our bodies will respond to that poorly because it will damage our estrogen cycling. You've also then got processed and refined foods. Basically, we all know that processed foods aren't great for us. Refined foods, so like refined sugars, refined white flours and those sorts of things, if you can avoid them, please try to. But also all the other things that come into it. So things like lectins, fillers, stabilizers, all that sort of stuff that comes in prepackaged foods. If you don't have to eat a load of it, try not to because it's not good for you. You're basically preserving your insides. We don't need to sit in our own formaldehyde. That's for when we're dead. High levels of alcohol is actually really damaging for estrogen. So a glass of wine in an evening is not the end of the world. If you're having a bottle of wine every evening, then I would say you need to kind of think about things. Unfermented soy products. Soy, I told you we were going to come back to soy. Foods in plastic and canned packaging because these also contain what's called xenoestrogens. So they're basically fake estrogens that pretend to be estrogen that attack our own estrogen making sources. So it's against those plastics, BPAs, those sorts of things that are bad for everybody, particularly for women because they attack the way that our bodies actually create hormones. High fructose corn syrup, basically corn syrup is one of the devil's inventions. Corn syrup basically tells your brain that it is getting sugar and then doesn't give you the sugar. It's like a sweetener. It's a liar. So your insulin levels will spike, your blood sugar levels will go up, but there's no actual sugar and estrogen running around, so everything kind of goes a bit pear-shaped. You're more likely to end up insulin resistance, which more likely to end up being diabetic. We don't want to go down that path. And then trans fats. We all know that trans fats are bad for us. That's why we do it and try not to find them in things. Soy. When it comes to soy, soy mimics estrogen. So high levels of soy in your diet means that you've got mimic estrogen running around in your body, which means that your body will then not produce estrogen itself. Hence why soy is bad. Soy is okay if you have an Asian background, because their bodies have, over the generations and centuries, actually got used to the fact that soy is in their diet, like seaweed. They can digest it in ways that we can't, just like we can digest lactose in ways that they can't. So the European world is designed to digest lactose because we've been drinking cow's milk and goat's milk and all that sort of stuff for more time out of mind than we actually know. Whereas in the Asian countries, they don't really do the whole dairy product thing. They do fish and they do seaweed and they do soy. So their bodies are different to our Western bodies over and through here. This is why we have slightly different diet types, and which is why you can't just go and have an Asian diet and expect the same results as what they get in through there. And they can't just come and have a European diet and not expect to get some of the issues that we have. When it comes to progesterone, food support for this one, we need to have a good level of vitamin C. This is also really important for your immune function. You don't want to be inflammatory. If you're curious about that, come talk to me later. Zinc, magnesium, healthy fats, vitamin B6 and seed cycling. So seed cycling, so the first half of your cycle when you're in your period, and then the second part after that, so you're going into that ovulation stage, you're thinking things like sesame seeds and sunflower seeds. When you're in the second half, you're thinking pumpkin seeds and, flax seeds, I think. Those are the other seeds. So they will actually support you through those different stages because they will help to keep those right levels of hormones going through, and they will stop them from going into stupid things. In terms of damaging foods, again, we're talking about soy products. We're talking about non-organic dairy because of the added hormones. We've got sugary foods and refined carbohydrates, alcohol and excessive caffeine. I don't mean 1 or 2 cups of tea or coffee a day. I'm talking excessive, I'm talking more than 5. If you are having more than 5 cups of tea or coffee or both a day, we have issues. You need to wean yourself off. That's too much caffeine. Alcohol, we talked about that one. Processed and fatty meats. So when we talk about processed and fatty meats, we mean all the fun deli meats that we all like. Salami, chorizo, bacon, all of those things. In moderation, they are fine. In large doses, they're bad for you because they have a load of stabilizers, they've got a load of pectins, they've got a load of different fats that have been added into them, and they've been designed basically to behave like plastic, so they last forever. When you've got something that lasts forever inside your stomach, your body will then start to preserve itself. We don't need to pickle our own insides. And then foods with high pesticides. So if you can get organic produce as much as you can, please go ahead. A lot of the population these days who think they have a gluten intolerance actually have a pesticide intolerance because of the amount and the type of pesticides that are used in mass-produced farming. So if you've got an intolerance to gluten, check where your sources of gluten have been coming from, and then try the organic stuff and see if you have any differences. In terms of testosterone, healthy fats and protein, green leafy vegetables, cruciferous vegetables again, so things like broccoli, nuts and seeds, shellfish, surprisingly enough, it's quite good for your testosterone levels, which is probably why a lot of people feel a bit frisky after they have shellfish or seafood. And then things like pomegranates, cherries and dark chocolate also support your healthy levels. Damaging foods. Sugars, refined carbohydrates, alcohol, mint tea. Now this was really surprising. I didn't know this when I started researching this, but spearmint and peppermint tea in large doses, so more than 5 cups a day, actually lowers your testosterone levels. So if you know somebody who's got PCOS, who's got high levels of natural testosterone running around, encourage them to drink mint tea. Don't encourage your partner to drink mint tea if you want to have an active sex life because they will lose their libido. It will go down. Too much licorice root, too much caffeine, trans fats, polyunsaturated fats, particularly omega-6. Omega-6 is pro-inflammatory. And if your body is in high levels of inflammation, your body is not going to be healing. It is also not going to be responding to hormones correctly. You want omega-3. That is the anti-inflammatory one. That's the one that we give you when we give you all of your supplements. Not 6. 6 is bad. Omega-3 is good, omega-6 is bad. Flax seeds in large doses will also lower your testosterone levels because testosterone and estrogen work in a balance. So if you have too much estrogen, you have too little testosterone. If you have too much testosterone, you have too little estrogen. So that's why we go through this cycle of high estrogen at one end and high testosterone at the other end, because this is part of our balancing act. When we then get into menopause, we come back to this kind of like more even balance where they don't swing up and down quite as much, but we still need testosterone because it will keep our bones and our bodies strong, as well as our brains functioning nicely. Walnut and almonds, soy products can keep you high in testosterone because of the way that it mimics estrogen, so it will lower those levels. So if you have abnormally high levels of estrogen, that is when soy is your friend. That's unusual though. Most people don't have that. Usually that's men when men get into menopause, which does happen. So when men start developing the apple, they start to let themselves go, as they say, and they get a little bit booby and all those sorts of things. That's because their levels of testosterone have dropped and their levels of estrogen have raised. Their libido goes down, they get a little bit lethargic, they start, they get old, basically. Those are the times where you're going to be like, okay, you need to eat more soy.
Can I just ask you, Georgia, all this that, the ups and downs and everything like that, are you still talking basically about the premenopausal?
No, this is postmenopause as well.
Postmenopausal.
So this is relevant for you at every stage of life. So, these 3 phrases I want you to commit to memory. Whoops. That was me.
That's too quick.
Sorry. Okay. So strength and nutrition are powerful tools at any stage. So what you eat and how you train your body will keep you fit, will keep you healthy, and will help you to age well. Whether that's gracefully or not is up to you. Understanding your body will help you to make better choices. So knowing how your cycle works, knowing which life cycle you're at or which one you're approaching, and knowing how to deal with those stages will help you to have better long-term health and better outcomes as you go through those stages. So sharing as much of this information with as many women as you know as possible will help everybody to understand how they can help themselves, and will help fewer of us end up under the knife having stuff taken out that doesn't need to be taken out. If you don't have a cancer that requires your uterus to be removed or your ovaries to be removed, please try and keep them. We have them for a reason. It's like your appendix. We do actually need them. They're not just there because they can be. They have a purpose.
What about fibroids?
Fibroids, if you can get the fibroids removed without removing the uterus, try and do that. If the fibroids are stable and they're doing their own thing, about 50% of the time you can leave a fibroid alone and it will be fine. But they are an interesting one, those ones. Usually fibroids is because you have a hormonal imbalance going on in through there. So if you can address the imbalance, the fibroids themselves will start to shrink on their own without need for further stuff. Also, don't fight your biology. Don't pretend to be a man. Please don't try and be small men. Just understand it. Too many women try and train like small men. Too many women try and behave like small men. If you're going to be a CEO of your own company, do it your way. You don't have to be bombastic. You don't have to be manpower. You can do things your own way, and you can be just as good at it, if not better. Because when you're true to who you are less stressed. And people like you more because they understand you're being authentic.
Georgia, can I ask you a question
You may.
again from the estrogen slide?
Mm-hmm.
As a no, and that was food in plastic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, often, like in the frozen section,
Mm-hmm.
you will get bags of maybe vegetables all cut up in plastic bags. Is that bad? Is that what you mean by food in plastic?
It depends on the type of plastic that it's in. So as long as the plastic itself is mostly BPA free, you are okay with having it in small doses. If all you eat is food that comes in plastic, you don't have anything that's outside of it, so like fresh vegetables as well, then I would be a little bit more concerned. The plastics themselves are not good for us in long term.
Okay.
They're not good for the environment, but they're also not good for our bodies.
Sure.
It's very hard to find stuff that's not wrapped in plastic these days, so
Even ice creams.
even ice cream. So you do have to kind of have a look around and see what you can find. So one of the things that Theo and I do is we get our vegetables delivered to us through Riverford, and it comes in cardboard boxes. They don't wrap anything in plastic. If they do wrap it in some sort of covering, it's a potato starch covering that they use, which is compostable. So having a look at where your options are and what your sources are and where they're coming from and how long the transition is between places, not only is it good for the environment, it's better for your bodies because you will digest it better if it's closer to the original source and it's not covered in all sorts of crazy pesticides and growth factors. Like bananas, for example. Bananas in season, brilliant. Bananas out of season, they ship them in green, they stick a whole heap of like growth factor on them and they leave them there while they're green, and then they will ripen themselves because they're covered in hormones. Which is why if you've got pears and apples and things and you want them to ripen faster, you stick them with your bananas. Because the hormones that are on the outsides of the bananas will affect the other fruit around them. Top tip. Sorry, back up a stage here. I think I've just gone too many pages. Where are we going? That one. Back to this one.
I hope you've done some literature to back this up.
I can give it to you if you want to. I've not put it on the slides.
My memory is absolutely appalling.
It's all right, we can talk about that later. So, strength and resistance training are some of the most important things for us as women. So, one of the things about being a woman that's a little bit annoying is we do tend to be a little bit more flexible than men, which means that our joints are more likely to come out if we're weak. So sprained ankles, dislocated shoulders, dislocated knees, things along those lines. We are more likely to have those sorts of issues. So strengthening around our joints is really important. This, as I said, does not mean you need to start go pumping weights at the gym, but it does mean that you do need to use at least body weight training. So learning to do a plank, learning to do a wall sit. One thing I've been talking to Victoria about is everybody should be able to do a wall sit for a minimum of 45 seconds. A woman who is well trained should be able to do a wall sit for 2 minutes and not feel shaky. I'm still training Victoria on this one. So strength and resistance training is really important for these sorts of things, and you can do this more than 3 times a week. I would say a minimum is 3 times a week in terms of doing some training like this. If you can do it more frequently, please do. It doesn't mean you have to do pump weights every day at the gym, but you do need to do some form of exercise. Whether it's going for a long walk one day and then going to the gym the next day, doing yoga, Pilates, pole dancing, any of those sorts of things, it's very good for you. Any of those sorts of things are really good for you because you are using your body weights and you are working against your own body. And that is the best way to train yourselves. So you don't have to push a massive weight above your head. Because you don't want to look like the world's Wonder Muscle Woman, do you? You just want to be strong and stable. I mean, if you want to look like the world's Wonder Woman muscle, you can. That's your choice, but you don't need to. It's really, really, really important that you do these things after 35. Once we hit 35, that is our peak. And after that, our bodies don't recover as quickly, and we don't gain as quickly either. So we are more likely to be fighting a losing battle from that age onwards, particularly once we hit 50. That's when the next big jump down happens. So like 35 is the first one, 50 is the next one, and then each decade after that, it does get harder. So you do have to work a tiny bit harder to keep yourself strong and stable at those points. And simple things like learning to do a push-up, learning to do a plank, learning to do a wall sit, learning to do some gentle squats, those sorts of things, even doing step-ups on your stairs, all those sorts of things will help. And that's a really good way to start, okay? Because it preserves your muscle tissue, supports bone density, protects your metabolism, which helps you control your weight, and it improves your balance, therefore less likely to fall over and break your hip, and it will keep you independent longer. Don't want to end up in an old people so I'm not able to move anywhere, do we? And it's one of your best predictors of healthy aging. So if you are strong and fit and stable and healthy and outdoorsy, I'm going to say outdoorsy with a pinch of salt, not everybody's outdoorsy, but if you like being active, whether that's outside or inside, you are more likely to age well, you're more likely to age with a strong body that is able to withstand any of the stresses that come at you without falling apart in the corner somewhere. What are we doing now? Recovery. This is really important. Women's bodies take longer to recovery. So if you do a 2-hour run, a man would take 12 to 14 hours to recover from a 2-hour run. A woman, no, not quite that bad. A woman will take 24 to 36 hours to recover from the same exertion. So we will take 30 to 40% longer than the average man. So if you've got a smartwatch that tells you how much recovery time you've got, add an extra 45 minutes to an hour to everything, because it is still based on men's metrics. So you do need to add longer, and you do need to eat more, and you need to eat earlier. A man can wait an hour after he's trained and still get the same gains. A woman can't. We need to eat within half an hour of doing any form of exercise in order to maintain what we started with and get gains from it as well. So if you are doing a long run, you're doing a training program, you're doing some sort of exercise, you're going out for a walk, take foods with you. Eat them on the go. Have a handful of nuts at the end of a training session. Have a protein bar. Have a peanut butter thing, whatever you want to be doing. But make sure you eat something, and if you can have whole foods, have whole foods. Avoid as much as possible any of those hydration gels or things that they do when you do sort of like long marathons, long sort of like cycling events and those sorts of things. They don't work for women. In fact, they damage us and we don't respond well to them from either a nutritional perspective or from a maintenance of energy perspective. We actually respond very poorly to them. Our bodies are more likely to shove that out of us and eat its own muscle than it is to actually eat the gel. And in about 50% of men, it's the same thing. So they're not good for people. So if you know anybody who's like an avid cyclist or a marathon runner, tell them don't have gels. They're bad. So we need to adequately recover and we need to fuel. We tolerate endurance a lot better than we tolerate power. So going long rather than going hard is actually better for women. We are actually quite good at endurance sides of things. If you compare us to men, we're actually stronger in our legs than our upper half. We're a little bit sort of like 60-40. Men are very 50-50, they can do both. We are very much, we've got most of our strength downstairs rather than upstairs, which is why we can do more with our legs than we can do with our arms. That's why most women gain their weight down in around their hips, is because that's where we're used to taking most of the pressure and the weight of our lives. It's kind of cool. Just a bit of a side tip there. Overeating and overall undertraining, it will backfire on you. So if you eat too much and don't train enough, you'll gain weight. If you train too much and don't fuel yourself enough, you will end up going the opposite direction where you will damage your body, and you can damage it to the point where it will cause you long-term health problems. We all know that eating disorders are bad for us, but eating disorder combined with overtraining is even worse. Your body will age at a factor of 55-1. So rather than aging 1 year for 1 year, you age 55 years in 1 year if you've got an eating disorder and overtraining at the same time. That's why people who have had anorexia or bulimia in the past look a lot older, a lot faster, because their bodies aren't coping with the stress. Post-menopause, your body will respond differently to different types of training. You want to do short bursts of higher intensity every so often, so a little bit of HIIT training every so often is actually quite good for you. Usually HIIT training, I would say you want to do it no more than once a week to once every fortnight, and it wants to be a short half-an-hour burst. So half an hour of some form of HIIT training, and then the rest of it you want to be resistance and endurance training. So things like yoga, things like Pilates, things like Tai Chi, things like body balance and all those sorts of things. Dancing, a really good thing to do. So if you want to take up ballroom dancing, you want to take up, tango and all those sorts of things, go ahead. It's really good for you because it keeps your brain involved because you're learning different moves, you're learning different actions. It's social, which is really good for us, but it's also training your body to withstand gravity and to withstand stress of movement. And don't forget to prioritize protein post-menopause, because your body is more likely to eat itself if you're not having enough protein. So please, when you get to the menopause and post-menopause side of things, have more protein. That can be things like legumes. So beans are good for you. Eat the beans. You may be a bit farty afterwards, but eat the beans. The other things that are really important beyond simple diet and exercise, maintaining good stress levels. Short-term stress is good for us. That's what we're designed to deal with. Long-term stress is bad. It's not only bad for your physical self, it is bad for your mental self. So please, if you have too much stress in your life, you need to find a counsellor, you need to find a support network, and you need to learn to offload it better. Easier said than done, I know. But there are things out there that can help you with this, and there are things that we can teach you how to do as your chiropractors as well. So there are tips and tricks you can take home to learn how to manage your stress levels better. Sleep. Now, surprisingly enough, there has been some research done on women in sleep, and we actually need more sleep than men. I know. The average man needs 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. A minimum of 8 hours is good, but you can survive on 7 for a short period of time. Women need 9 to 10. We need 9 to 10 hours of sleep to get the same gains as men. And that's not just in terms of physical health, that's also our mental health. So if you're not getting 9 hours of sleep a night, you're actually doing yourself a disservice and you're not as healthy as you could be. So surprisingly enough, we need more sleep. I know that's a problem, isn't it? As soon as you have kids, it all goes out the window. But no, we do need about 9 hours of sleep a night in order to get the same type of mental capacity and physical health as a man at 8 hours. So it's quite interesting. So you can wave that card at them and be like, I need more sleep than you, so I'm going to bed. You can do the dishes. The other thing that's really important as women is social connection. So women are wired to be social beings. We are wired to be what keeps the glue of the tribe together. Our job is to maintain cohesion and connection within our tribe. If that is your family or your community or your poker group or whatever, that is what women are designed to do. That's where our brains wire from very early on. So from when we're infants, all the way through nursery, all the way through into puberty, all the way through into menopause, that is how our brains wire. That is why women are usually better at creating small group connections than men are. And we're better at maintaining them. Because that's how our brains wire. We wire people together rather than necessarily going to fix a problem. We're more likely to make a talk group about it and be like, okay, how do we fix this problem, than we are to actually kind of pick up a tool and start doing something about it. We'll talk about it first, then we'll go and do it. Because that's how we've been designed. We're designed to create connection by creating community, and community is therefore really important to our long-term health physically, but also our mental health. An unsocialized solo woman is at a 70% more likelihood of having a severe mental health disorder than a man. We all need connection. We're human. We're designed for community. But for a woman, it's actually really important that you have at least a small, tight-knit social network that is your core go-to. Because that is what will keep your brain healthy, and it is what will help to maintain your physical health as well. Because when your brain is healthier, you're physically more able to do things because you have more energy to do it. Everybody okay with that? Yeah? That's what I said at the very beginning. Women are not small men, and the difference in our biology